third-party content has been copied and communicated pursuant to Part 5A or 5B of the Copyright Act, unless indicated otherwise.
One of the main features of neuroscience and one of the central themes of this unit is that function is localized. Different areas of the nervous system are specialized to do different things. This core learning objective is on the lateralization of function, with the focus being on differences but also similarities between the two parts of the brain, the two hemispheres of the brain. So what do we mean by lateralization of function? Well, it means that the lateral parts of the brain, the left and the right, when you cut down the midline, are different functionally. Now, as I mentioned before, anatomically they're very similar. You cut the brain down along the sagittal midline and you get two very similar looking halves. They're pretty much identical to the layperson. Functionally, they're quite different. The first thing to note, and we'll revisit this again later, is that the two halves are connected. Now, the connections are shown here, and there are several points of where these connections occurred. The smaller areas are called commissures, and they are small regions of crossover. But the big area is called a corpus callosum, and it is shown as that white matter on the left in the coronal section, and it's that kind of slight U-shaped bend almost in the middle, slightly up in the middle of the brain. And on the right picture, which is a sagittal view, it's that great big chunk of paler tissue that's kind of shaped like an N in the middle of the brain. All that white stuff is myelinated axons, and it accounts for the bulk of the crosstalk between the two brains, the two half brains. Because the corpus callosum is a very central structure and inherently an interconnecting structure, it's actually quite hard to reveal it. So here in this picture, we're viewing the brain from above, and it's pointing out like the eyes would be facing upwards. We're looking at the brain from above, and you can see clearly the two hemispheres, the two halves, pretty much similar. Now we'll remove the cortical tissue, leaving behind the fibers, that is the axons, belonging to the corpus callosum. And you can see there in the very center, on the right picture, in the very center, is the actual band of the corpus callosum, and the fibers that go across it, because the corpus callosum is like a bridge. These are kind of like the roads that go across the bridge. And you can see how they very thoroughly integrate the two halves. You have people who think that the two half brains are somehow separate in a normal, intact human being are very misguided. The hemispheres are constantly talking to each other. So this whole left brain, right brain, I'm a left brain person, you're a right brain person, that is very fanciful. The hemispheres are very interconnected. Before we delve into the function of the corpus callosum, and in fact what happens when the corpus callosum is damaged or removed, let's talk about some pathways that are hemispherically separated or integrated that occur outside of, that is beyond the corpus callosum. So we're going to compare, and we're doing this mainly because the textbook focuses on this. We're going to compare vision to hearing, and you can see that with vision, and we'll be revisiting this, by the way, in the sensory perception topic later on. You can see that with vision, light coming from the left half of the visual field, so coming from the left of whatever you're looking at, will go to the right half of your retinas, the right half of your eye. And that information, which is coloured here in blue, goes to the right hemisphere, whereas light coming from the right visual field goes to our left eye and continues on to the left visual field. Most importantly in this context is the structure that's indicated both in the diagram and in a ventral view of the brain itself, the optic chiasm, that crossover, that X, again white because it's predominantly myelinated axons. And that allows crosstalk between the eyes. So when we say information from the left visual field goes to the right brain, it's left visual field information that hits both the left eye and the right eye, that is those blue lines. And when we say right visual field information goes to the left brain, it is that pink coloured information in the retinas of both eyes that go to the left hemisphere. So there's a crossover at the optic chiasm, what are called at the nasal regions of the retina, that is the parts of the eye that are closest to your nose, they cross over. That's quite different from what happens in audition. With hearing, the information is obviously collected by the left ear and separately from the right ear. But what you see almost straight away is as soon as this information goes through neural processing streams, that there is complete 50% crossover. That is, at the very beginning, the information from the right ear and the left ear are combined. Um, and that's very important. The combination of the left and the right ear is critical because what the auditory system wants to know is, are there slight differences between the right and the left ear? They are very important, those differences, for telling me where the sound is coming from. Location of sound is extremely important, and it's achieved mainly by comparing left and right ears in terms of intensity and in terms of phase or time of onset of a sound wave. And we'll talk about that. We'll dedicate quite a few minutes in a later class on this issue. But the key factor here is they are combined, mixed together, and sent to the two temporal regions in the auditory cortex for processing.